Synchromolnic facts about gravity. We all studied the law of universal gravitation at school, but what do we actually know about gravity, besides the information that was put into our heads by our school teachers? Let's refresh our knowledge. 1. The law of universal gravitation. Everyone knows the famous story about the apple that fell on Newton's head. But the thing is, Newton didn't discover the law of universal gravitation because this law is simply not present in his book Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. There is neither a formula nor a statement of it in this work, as anyone can see for themselves. Moreover, the first mention of the gravitational constant only appears in the 19th century. Accordingly, the formula could not have appeared earlier. By the way, the coefficient g, which reduces the result of calculations by 600 billion times, has no physical meaning and was introduced to conceal contradictions. Of all the known fundamental constants, it is the numerical value of the gravitational constant that is determined with the least accuracy, although the importance of this value is hard to overestimate. All attempts to clarify the exact value of this constant have not been successful, and all measurements have remained within too wide a range of possible values. The editor of Nature magazine called the persistent inaccuracy of the gravitational constant, a value still not exceeding 1 in 1005, a stain of shame on physics. In the early 1980s, Frank Stacey and colleagues measured this constant in Australian deep mines and boreholes, and the value he obtained turned out to be about 1% higher than the official value currently accepted. 2 laboratory confirmations. It is believed that Cavendish was the first to demonstrate gravitational attraction in laboratory test masses using a torsion balance. A horizontal beam with weights at the ends was suspended on a thin wire. The beam could rotate on the thin wire. According to the official version, Cavendish brought a pair of 158 kilodream masses close to the weights on the beam from opposite sides, and the beam rotated by a small angle. However, the experimental method was flawed, and the results falsified, as convincingly proven by physicist Andrei Albertovich Grishaev. Cavendish spent considerable time adjusting the apparatus to match Newton's stated average Earth density. The experiment involved repeatedly moving dummy weights, and the beam rotated due to micro-vibrations from these movements, which were transmitted to the suspension. This is confirmed by the fact that such a simple educational setup should be available in every school, or at least in university physics departments, so that students can be shown the results of the law of universal gravitation in practice. However, Cavendish's setup is not used in educational programs. Both school children and students take it on faith that 2 masses attract each other. 3 oddities of the moon. If you use Earth, Moon, and Sun reference data in the law of universal gravitation, you'll find that during a solar eclipse, the gravitational force between the Sun and Moon is over twice as strong as that between the Earth and Moon. The formula suggests the Moon should have left Earth's orbit and started orbiting the Sun. The Moon, among other things, does not exhibit its gravitational properties toward the Earth. The Earth-Moon pair does not move around a common center of mass, as it would be according to the law of universal gravitation, and the Earth's elliptical orbit, contrary to this law, does not become zigzag-shaped. Moreover, the parameters of the Moon's own orbit do not remain constant. In scientific terms, the orbit evolves, and it does so contrary to the law of universal gravitation. How can that be, you might ask? After all, even school children know about ocean tides on Earth, which happen because water is attracted to the Sun and the Moon. According to the theory, the Moon's gravity forms a tidal ellipsoid in the ocean with 2 tidal bulges, which move across the Earth's surface due to its daily rotation. However, in practice, these theories seem absurd because according to them, a tidal bulge 1 meter high should move from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic through the Drake Passage in just 6 hours. Since water is incompressible, the mass of water would raise the level by about 10 meters, which does not happen in practice. Tidal phenomena typically occur independently in regions about 1,000 to 2,000 kilometers wide. Laplace was puzzled by the paradox that Despite the tidal ellipsoid concept suggesting high tide should occur simultaneously, high tide in French seaports happens sequentially. 4. Measuring gravity. The principle of gravity measurements is simple. Gravimeters measure vertical components, and deviations from weight indicate horizontal components. The English first tested mass gravitation theory in the mid-18th century on the shore of the Indian Ocean, where on one side lies the world's highest stone ridge, the Himalayas, and on the other, the ocean basin filled with much less massive water. But the plumb line doesn't deflect toward the Himalayas. Moreover, ultra-sensitive instruments do not detect any difference in the weight of a test object at the same altitude, whether above massive mountains or above less dense seas of kilometer depth. To save the established theory, scientists came up with a support for it. Allegedly, the reason for this is isostasy. Denser rocks lie under the seas, while looser rocks are beneath mountains, with their density precisely adjusted as needed. Experiments show that gravimeters in deep mines find gravity doesn't decrease with depth, but increases, depending only on the square of the distance to Earth's center. There are natural gravity anomalies that also have no clear explanation from official science. Here are a few such examples.
Here are the car keys. I put them on the roof. Put it in neutral. I got out of the car. Upstairs.
He's really going upstairs.
I'll start it now.
He's really going upstairs.
This is our parking lot. This one, bullfinches, not bullfinches, this one. Yeah, that's how it is, yeah. And over there it goes. We have this thing, and it runs. We have a little river like that. It flows uphill. Basically, look, there's a leaf floating. Two people stopped here and asked, tell us, please, what do you think? Is there a slope here, or does it just seem that way to us, or is it an illusion? Some kind of optical trick, maybe. Look, the cars are going that way. Yeah, there they are. And the river is flowing toward us.
It's flowing upstream, damn it.
Upstream.
A cluster of cars on the side of this mountain road is a common sight. Tourists from Armenia and foreigners always stop to see the miracle with their own eyes. The road goes uphill at an angle of about 10 degrees. However, every driver feels that the usual force of gravity does not make movement difficult in this case. A simple experiment can help confirm that this is an anomalous zone. The car, instead of rolling down, goes uphill without my intervention. In some areas, the car even picks up speed, and tourists say it's clearly easier to walk up the slope. The river that flows uphill here completely shatters the usual understanding of the laws of nature.
5. Lack of gravity on small celestial bodies. The independence of gravity from matter is confirmed by the fact that, with very rare exceptions, small bodies in the solar system completely lack gravitational attraction. Except for the Moon and Titan, more than 60 planetary satellites show no signs of their own gravity. This has been proven by both indirect and direct measurements. For example, since 2004, the Cassini probe has occasionally flown near Saturn's moons, but no changes in the probe's speed have been recorded. With Cassini's help, a geyser was discovered on Enceladus, Saturn's sixth largest moon. What physical processes must occur on a cosmic chunk of ice for jets of steam to shoot out into space? For the same reason, Titan, Saturn's largest moon, has a gas tail as a result of atmospheric outflow. No predicted theories or satellites have been found around asteroids, despite their vast numbers, and in all reports of binary or paired asteroids that supposedly orbit a common center of mass, there has been no evidence of such pairs actually revolving. The companions happen to be nearby by chance, moving in quasi-synchronous orbits around the Sun. Attempts to launch artificial satellites into orbit around asteroids ended in failure. Examples include the Near-Earth Asteroid Rendezvous probe, which the Americans sent to the asteroid Eros, or the Hayabusa probe, which the Japanese sent to the asteroid Itokawa. 6. Alternative research. There are a large number of alternative studies with impressive results in the field of gravity, which fundamentally contradict the theoretical conclusions of official science. Few know that Viktor Stepanovich Grebennikov, a Siberian entomologist, described anti-gravity in insects in his book, My World, after studying their cavity structures. Scientists have long known that massive insects, such as the May beetle, fly more in defiance of the laws of gravity than because of them. Moreover, based on his research, Grebennikov created an anti-gravity platform. Viktor Stepanovich died in unusual circumstances, and some of his work was lost. However, a prototype of the anti-gravity platform remains and is on display at the Grebennikov Museum in Novosibirsk. Another practical application of anti-gravity can be observed in the city of Homestead, Florida, where there is a strange structure made of coral monolithic blocks, popularly known as the Coral Castle. It was built by a Latvian immigrant, Edvard Lidskelen, in the first half of the 20th century. This man, who was of slender build, had no tools, no car, and no machinery at all. He didn't use electricity at all, also because it wasn't available. And yet, somehow, he would go down to the ocean, where he carved multi-ton stone blocks and somehow transported them to his property, laying them out with perfect precision. After Ed died, scientists began studying his creations closely. For the sake of experiment, a powerful bulldozer was brought in, and an attempt was made to move one of the 30-ton blocks of the Coral Castle. The bulldozer roared and skidded, but it still couldn't move the huge stone. Inside the castle, a strange device was found, which scientists called a direct current generator. It was a massive structure with many metal parts, and on the outside of the device, 240 permanent strip magnets were embedded. But how Edward Leedskalnin actually managed to move multi-ton blocks still remains a mystery. Some researchers are analyzing the vibrational nature of anti-gravity. This effect is clearly shown in a modern experiment using acoustic levitation to suspend droplets in the air. Here we see how, with the help of sound at a certain frequency, it is possible to confidently hold droplets of liquid in the air. Here's an effect that initially appears easy to explain using gyroscope principles. However, even such a simple experiment mostly contradicts gravity as it is understood today. John Searle's research is well known. He created unique generators that spun and produced energy. Discs with diameters from 0.5 meter to 10 meters would fly from London to Cornwall and return in controlled flights. Professor Searle's experiments were repeated in Russia, the United States of America, and Taiwan. In Russia, for example, in 1999, an application was filed for a patent for a device to generate mechanical energy. Vladimir Vitalyevich Roshchin and Sergei Mikhailovich Godin recreated the Searle effect generator and conducted several studies with it. The result was a statement that it is possible to obtain 7 kilowatts of electricity without any input, and the rotating generator lost up to 40% of its weight. The equipment from Searle's first laboratory was taken away to an unknown location while he was in prison. The Godin and Roshan subtitle editor installation vanished. All publications about it, except the invention application, have vanished. 7. Gravity and the theory of relativity. According to modern understanding, the speed of light is finite. As a result, we see distant objects not where they are located at this moment, but at the point from which the light ray we see started. But at what speed does gravity propagate? After analyzing the available data, Laplace concluded gravity travels at least 7 orders of magnitude faster than light. Modern measurements of pulsar pulse reception have pushed the speed of gravity propagation even further, at least 10 orders of magnitude faster than the speed of light. Thus, experimental research contradicts the general theory of relativity, which official science still relies on despite its complete inconsistency. In fact, orthodox science admitted its own impotence when it introduced the so-called dark matter into scientific circulation. It was then discovered that spiral galaxies rotate as a single whole, which contradicts Kepler's law. Contrary to the law of universal gravitation, stars on the periphery rotate too quickly and should have flown apart due to centrifugal forces. At the same time, all sorts of searches for dark matter particles using the most sensitive instruments have led to nothing. And yet, even at the beginning of the last century, scientists knew that the space around us is not empty. It is completely filled with a variety of different matters, or primary matters, as defined in the concept of a heterogeneous universe. At that time, these primary matters were called ether, and convincing evidence of its existence was obtained. For example, Dayton Miller's well-known experiments are discussed in the articles Theory of the Universe and Objective Reality. However, at a certain point, global scientific thought was deliberately led in a false direction. And that is why there is still no clear scientific explanation for the nature of gravity. Soon, we will release a detailed video on this topic on our channel, so we recommend turning on notifications so you don't miss any relevant videos.